You are listening to the 90 Days Later podcast with Anna Charles, episode 141. Welcome to the 90 Days Later podcast, where I show you how life with less alcohol is more fun than you think. I work with high achievers who struggle to drink a glass of wine without it turning into 2 bottles. I'm the one they call when they want to take it or leave it. So if you want to change your relationship with alcohol that doesn't involve counting days sober, you're in the right place. Hello everybody and welcome back to the podcast. Today we are talking about motivation. In fact, specifically a myth about motivation. This is very yummy indeed. Now, before we talk about the myth that I'm going to explore and explode, let's start by asking what motivation actually is. Now, I looked up a definition, I like to do that, and I read that it's the driving force behind human actions. It's actually the process that initiates, guides, and maintains goal-oriented behaviors. Sounds rather fantastic, doesn't it? Now, if you put all of that together, it seems to imply that in order to take action on your goals, right, that you need motivation because it's the behavior that you're deploying in order to achieve your goals. But I want to offer today that it is a myth that you need motivation to achieve your goals or to tackle a task, any task, in fact. Yes, including transforming your relationship with alcohol so you can go into the golf club and just have a lime and soda without feeling embarrassed about it, right? Or you can go to the beach bar and order a mocktail instead of the treat cocktail that you would have on a holiday. But really, you don't need motivation to follow through on these tasks or your goals. You really don't. What you do need is grit and the resolve to take the intentional action you promised yourself that you would take, even though in the moment you don't really feel like taking it. Spoiler alert, most of the time you will not feel like doing what you planned on doing, right, when it comes to the time to do it. And that's not just saying no to the wine this evening. It's many things. It's going for a run in the morning. It's starting the project, cleaning out the garage, right? Or just saying no to your mother-in-law when she wants you to do something, right? Not feeling like doing something. This is what I really want to offer you. Not feeling like it is not a good enough reason to abandon your plan for anything in life, and particularly when it comes to changing your relationship with alcohol, which I know if you're listening to this podcast, you really, really want, right? So not feeling like it is just not a good enough reason. I want you to take that on, see how you think about it. What do you think about that? How does that feel? And instead, you can take action anyway. You can follow through anyway. You can get it done anyway. Even if you don't feel like it, your future self will thank you. Now, for some people, looking at their past can generate a sense of motivation and excitement for change, right? Because I've had enough with all of that. I want to do something differently. But for most of us, and it's very much was the case for me, it doesn't work that way because we tend to define what we're able to do by way of what we haven't been able to do, right? I haven't been able to do that before, so I guess that means I'm not going to be able to do it again. That's where our brain likes to go. Right? But does that generate a sense of motivation in you? In my experience, and this comes from real life, as well as working with dozens and dozens of clients now, it's much more normal in these scenarios to generate maybe a sense of ambivalence or even, this really reinforces that I'm not going to get what I want because I haven't got it yet, right? Because when we're looking back at all the times when things didn't go to plan, things didn't work out, it's hard to generate a sense of motivation from that. So we don't even try to do that, right? Instead of relying on motivation when it's not there, I want you to first ask yourself, sort of go back to basics. What is it you want? Now, one thing that will change your life forever is to think really seriously about what you want to create in your future. And so we're really future focused here. And when you can think about that, when you can think about, you can see yourself going into the bar and not even thinking about what you're going to have to drink. When about a future where you are more of who you want to be, right? Maybe you've stopped drinking entirely, or you're not drinking so much. You're just not thinking about the alcohol at all, which is a phenomenal place to be. When you start thinking about it in that way, you're going to start to feel differently. When you think about that more than your past, more than all the times it hasn't worked, more than all the reasons why it won't work, right? And we're thinking more into the future. You're also going to start taking action in a way that leads towards you getting what you want, right? This is like the old thing about if you're hitting it, not that I know tennis very well, but I was told once that if you're looking to serve, you want to be looking at where you want the ball to go, not at the net, right? If you're worried about hitting the net, you're going to be looking at the net, the ball is going to go into the net. That's what I was told, right? So whenever I've played tennis, not very often, I'm always taught to look at where I want the ball to go. And so it is here, right? We are directing our brain to where we want to be going. We're not spending all that time stewing over what hasn't worked, hoping that in there somewhere we're going to motivate ourselves to start taking action. But we need to do this intentionally, because your brain is not going to want to do this. It is hard work looking into the future. It's hard work imagining. It is hard work imagining that your reality could be different. Your brain is on a loop. It's thinking about what you're doing now and what you've done in the recent past, right? So when you think about the future, it's going to feel challenging. Remember, way back in the beginnings of this podcast, I talked about the motivational triad, right? Our brain is there. Our primitive brain wants to avoid pain, seek pleasure, and do it as efficiently as possible. Our brains are inherently quite lazy. We're going to have to, grapple with it here and tell it what we want it to be thinking. And when you do this, when you start thinking about your future and about what you want, you're going to come up with things like, well, I don't know. I don't know how to do this when I know what I want, but I don't know how to drink less. I don't know how to build my business. I don't know how to, find the man of my dreams, whatever it is, right? And all of these thoughts, I like to think of them as thought blockages. You don't want to accept them. If there's a blockage, we want to remove it. So I always want to start there. That's the baseline when we're thinking about motivation. We want to be pushing and steering our eyes towards where we are going. We're looking forward. We're not looking in that rear view mirror. Now, an overarching myth that I hear about with motivation is that it's a character trait, as in it's something you have or you don't have. And that's what we do so often, right? We talk about motivation, we turn it into a character trait. So we tend to think that there are people out there who just are very driven, and they're super focused, and that they just never give up, and it's kind of they were born that way, and we sort of see it as baked into our DNA. So it's in their DNA, and if you don't have it in your DNA, oh well, right? So if you're not one of those people, you're one of the rest, and so of course you're always going to struggle to access motivation. It's just like, well, I don't know, maybe I'm just not that motivated. Maybe it's just not who I am. How many times do you say that? Be on alert for that. It's just who I am. I'm just not a very driven person, maybe you're thinking. Maybe I just give up really easily. It's just who I am. It's how I always have been. And we kind of fill in the blanks. It's how I'm always going to be, right? That's what our brain wants to think. When it comes to alcohol, I know I used to fall into that trap quite a bit, which is peculiar and confusing because I didn't in other areas of my life. And if you are listening to this, I imagine you might see the same, right? You can probably see some areas of your life where, I just go for it. It doesn't matter if I feel motivated or not. When it comes to the Chablis at 6 o'clock, whoa, all bets are off, right? And so when we're thinking this about ourselves, when I just don't have it in me, I'm not motivated when it comes to the beer, then we're obviously not that committed, right? That's what we think. We think, well, I'm obviously not that committed because I'm not that motivated to take the action Anna says I need to be able to take. And that feels awful, right? It's like we don't want it enough. It's like we think, well, maybe I just need to hit that rock bottom. Maybe I just need to get to that point where I really want to be taking action, right? We think, I'm feeling so unmotivated. What is wrong with me? And all of this, my friend, all feels really awful. And what do we do when we're feeling all this way, we're thinking it's just not in us, it's not in our DNA, we're just not like that, we're not like these other special unicorn people out there. Well, we just want to push these thoughts out of our mind because it feels awful, right? And then we just don't address it, and then we kind of just go, right, we go to our default, which is where we are, and then we just carry on. But I don't want you to do this. Whenever you're listening to this, so this is Tuesday the 13th of August 2024, maybe it's right now, I want you to decide, and really decide that this lack of motivation that you might be feeling is not going to serve as a block anymore. Yes, feeling motivated is terrific, right? It does feel really good. I mean, I love that kind of, for me, it's like I kind of get this fizzing sense of energy in my limbs. Fizzing is the word to use. It's kind of like I'm on fire, right? So that is wonderful. And I think that's a real positive. And when you've got it, kind of go with it. But so often what I find is when we're feeling unmotivated, we just kind of give up. If we haven't got that fizzy kind of gung-ho feeling, we kind of give up. So that's what we're going to stop today, right? So we're breaking apart, we're exploding this myth that motivation is a character trait. And I'm going to talk about it in two ways, both very practical. You know me, I'm Miss Pragmatic here, right? So you can start taking action. Now, the first element of this myth is that, putting aside that it's a character trait, the first is that you need motivation to take action. Right? That you need to be in the zone to do things, that you need to have all of the positive thoughts that will have you taking action, that you have to basically wait until you're no longer thinking things like, I don't feel like it, right? I don't want to, I'll do it later, I'll do it tomorrow. So that when those thoughts come along, we just kind of have to wait for them to go, right? They'll go at some point, there'll be a break, and then we take action. And I also want you to stop thinking, if you are, that this is how other people get stuff done, right? They wait until all that negative stuff, all those negative thoughts are in their brain, and then they move, right? I also want you to think of all the things you do in your life that you just do even if you don't feel motivated, if you don't feel like it. It's like I think about when my children were young, right? Before they could look after themselves, there were times when I just wanted to put my feet up. Maybe we'd been out for the day or been hard at work, and, it was dinner time and they needed to be fed. And, my husband maybe was away at the time. And that was, so it was up to me to do this. And I would have zero motivation to do this. My motivation was to sit down and put my feet up. Right? It did not lie in terms of going into the kitchen and rusting up some dinner for the children, especially if they were cranky. Now, if you're thinking, Anna, that is a really silly, ridiculous example because you don't have a choice, you have to feed your children. Well, I want you to think about that. There is a choice here. There is a choice in everything in our lives, and that is a key point. There is a choice in everything. I didn't have to feed my children at the end of a long and tiring day. Let's face it, they would have survived even if I hadn't. So it wasn't even that. But of course I would feed them because I care for them, I love them, and I'm a good mother, right? But I chose to. And there are tons and tons of similar things in life where we can do stuff without feeling motivated and we don't make any fuss about it, right? We might grumble a bit, but we don't have this, I really don't feel like it, so I'm actually just not going to do it. But we do allow ourselves to do that when it comes to the wine or the Prosecco on a Friday night, right? But the situation is the same. We just make out that it's different. Right? We make out that when it comes to being willing to go through with our drink plan, we've had a harder day than we thought. That's when we start to act like one of those heroines in an old black and white film, right? So we clutch our pearls and look for our smelling salts to stir us into action, right? When we can just decide. We're going to go through on our plans. Right? So that's the first piece I want to talk about here. We really do not need to have motivation to take action. And I want you to think about all the times in the rest of your life when you actually just follow through and you go along with that, right? So this is not a foreign concept to you, but it might be when alcohol comes into view. Now, the second part that I want to talk about here of this myth is that motivation comes from outside of us, right? That if there's someone else, they're going to motivate me to do it, to do something. But motivation is simply a thought. It's a decision. And that's the thing that gets in the way of our taking action, a thought, right? And these are not some ghastly black thoughts that are stopping you, but they're often the most practiced thoughts, and they're really they're just default, and you might not even know, they might just seem really kind of bleh, right? You don't even notice them. So at 6 p.m. for me, it used to be, but I've had such a busy day, I deserve a reward. So that would be my motivation. It wasn't that the wine was there. It wasn't that it was a circumstance. It was the end of the day. It was my thought thinking, oh, that's what we do. We have a reward at the end of the day. And I know that this is true because I still have these thoughts. They're not about wine anymore, right? So these days it might come up at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. I'm working on a book at the moment. I actually really enjoy it. But when it comes to mid-afternoon, I have this long story since I was about 13, very aware of it, that I'm not very good in the middle of the afternoon. It's that whole mid-afternoon slump thing. And so if I'm working, I might have a thought that, but Anna, this is the time of day when you're not so productive. This is when you're tired. This is when it's really best to take a break. Now, of course, I have choice. But I tell you when I feel really good is if I just take action anyway. Now, I can take the action of having a break. I'm not saying here, I'm not forcing you to push through. I'm just suggesting that the motivation comes from ourselves. Does not come from outside of us, does not come from the fact that it's 3 p.m. in the afternoon. It comes from the fact that I'm thinking 3 p.m. in the afternoon is the time when, I'm not on top of my game. And when I think about this in these terms, it works every time, right? And what happens is that the more you do this, the more you take action, even when you don't want to, even though you don't feel like it, that really is the secret to success, because the more you take action, the more you see that you just have to teach your brain that just because I'm thinking these thoughts, it doesn't mean I have to listen to them, right? My brain is a tool. It is not me. My thoughts are not me. I can see my thoughts and I can decide if I want to go along with them or not. And the more you do this, the less you're going to listen to those thoughts that want you to stop, that say you can't, that it's impossible, that you need to wait, that you wait until tomorrow, right? The less compelling they become until it gets to the point where you see it doesn't really matter whether you feel like doing the thing or not. Right? But you see what's going on, that you're just having these thoughts that are blocking you from taking action, and you see the benefit of deciding not to listen to those thoughts, right? This is two things. So we see them, we understand they're what blocking us, and we see that by choosing not to decide to listen to them, we are going to take action and we're going to feel great, right? Because you see the benefit of taking action, especially when you don't feel like it. And also I would add, it's because these thoughts are not going to go away. Like I said just now, I still get them at 3 o'clock most afternoons. I get them when I'm faced with a task that I don't want to do. But I will say that the thoughts do get weaker, especially if you're focused in one area. So for instance, I just combined with the other things I teach around allowing cravings and all the planning and so on, I never, ever, 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 ever have these thoughts around a glass of white wine would be nice at the end of the day. I mean, that thought is just completely gone. My brain has totally given up having that thought because it knows it's not going to motivate me to take any action, right? So the more you don't listen to these thoughts, like I just said, the more you're going to build your motivation that you can just do the thing anyway. And that builds then the muscle of motivation, because that's what it is. It is a muscle. I do like to think of motivation in that way, even though it's a decision, it's a thought, it's a muscle. And when you develop this sense of motivation within you, then that becomes stronger than your thought, I don't feel like it, right? And it becomes stronger than not doing the thing. Now you will hear, I don't feel like it, and you're going to do it anyway, which, by the way, is so motivating. I love telling myself, and you can maybe use this. If this works for you, I'd write this thought down. And interchange obviously your name. But Anna, you are not the type of person who doesn't do something because she doesn't feel like it. Oh, that's a humdinger, that one. I love that thought. It really boosts me every time, right? And then when you do this, you're going to take action anyway. You're not just going to wait to feel enthused or even ready to get to the thing, right? No, you're just going to do it. But there is a double benefit of this. Not only will you get the benefit of doing the thing in the moment and feeling great about it, but you can do this. So the next time you have these thoughts, you're not going to go along and spend so much time entertaining them. And you're going to suffer less from feeling dreadful, right? Because you're not doing the thing that you know you want to do, but you aren't because you're telling yourself that you just don't feel like it, right? See how that loop goes? Oh, and I also, that's a tip actually I tell myself in the moment too. You don't feel like this now, Anna, but listen, you're not going to be feeling like doing it later either. So just get it done now, and then you don't have to worry about having to do the thing. That's motivation, right? So you have all access to all the motivation you need through your thinking. Plus, I will leave you with this, right? On this podcast, I talk about changing your relationship with alcohol. And there comes a point when you have to just get started. Now, the only reason you'll resist getting started is because getting started is uncomfortable. Well, so what? So what? Right? Whether it's comfortable or not is irrelevant. The real question is, does this action before me help me accomplish my goals? If the answer is yes, there's no point in debating what you'll do next. You just do it, despite the discomfort. Also, the truth is that there is discomfort both ways, right? There's discomfort in doing the task and in not doing it. And if there's discomfort both ways, I highly suggest you pick the path that gets you the results you want. Sure, it will be uncomfortable to say no to the drink tonight. Sure, it will be uncomfortable to allow those cravings and be aware of what's happening in your mind. But I want you to take the action anyway. I want you to just do it. Right? Just take the action. Be prepared to feel the discomfort. Take the action whether or not you feel motivated, whether or not you feel like it. Because again, feeling unmotivated, it isn't a problem. And it's not a good enough reason to not get started. So go. Take unmotivated action, start making some progress, begin gaining some traction, and motivation will follow. If you're listening to this waiting to feel ready and motivated to take action on your drinking, I want you to remember that motivation is a decision, and that decision is open to you right in this moment. And I'm going to offer you this. My clients took that decision, whether they felt motivated or not. They took the decision to help themselves get their desired results by committing to this process, by hiring and paying me. Yes, and by actively participating. They didn't wait for motivation. They decided, they did it, and they got their result. That could be you. If you are sitting there waiting to feel ready, waiting to get started, but just thinking, well, I'll do it tomorrow or after my holiday or at the end of the year or next year or blah, 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 right? Know that it's going to be just as hard in those situations because your brain will offer up a new thought block. So just decide right now that you can do this whether you feel motivated or not. You will thank yourself for it. Your future self will be so grateful to the version of you listening to this podcast today who says, that's it. I'm a-going for it. And if you want an additional incentive, my one-on-one prices will shortly be going up. So if you want to snag me at my current pricing, you need to act within the next few days. And you can do that by emailing me, anna@90dayslater.co, or by booking a call with me on my website, which is 90dayslater.co. Most of my clients decide to work with me after we have a quick call together. But maybe you have been listening to my podcasts, you've been reading my emails, right? You've been coming to my webinars, and you just know that I am your person. You know that you're ready to do this, even if you don't feel motivated, you're just willing to feel the discomfort, do it anyway. Then don't wait, right? Snag the price at its current level and be free from this struggle that you've been living with for long enough now, right? Enough is enough, and you want done with this. Let's get started. Okay, thanks for listening. I will see you next week.